Hey, sorry for the long wait, and I say that because I think the last video update of me doing anything with this guitar was probably about 1 year ago, probably on the dot, I bet. But that's how long I've been waiting for time to free up, and then my painting conditions to be decent, adequate. We'll say adequate, because I live in Wisconsin. Okay, so mind you, our winters are very cold, very dry. Our summers are pretty warm, crazy humid. And I bring all this up because ideally you would want to paint this in a controlled environment, like say in your house. I live in an old enough house that the heat isn't all that great. The AC isn't all that great. And by that I mean there is no air conditioning. So I have nothing to control humidity aside from using humidifiers and dehumidifiers, which honestly only treat the specific room that you're in, and they're still subject to fluctuation. And humidity is the last thing you want to be painting guitar with. And the only temperature stable place I have in the whole house is the basement. But the basement doesn't have a floor. And that means that since it's a dirt floor, there's plenty of moisture down there, even with my dehumidifier set to a healthy, I think I got it between like 35-40% right now during the summer. Anywho, so that kind of meant that this really had to take place outside, me painting it. Well, this has been one heck of a summer for Wisconsin. There has been over 2.5 months straight, okay? So I say straight, there was not a day that deviated from this. 2.5 months straight. So we're talking 10 weeks straight, where it was overnight 80 some degrees, and then during the day it would be somewhere in the upper 80s to upper 90s, and every single time it was tremendously high humidity. I've never witnessed such a hot and wet summer, because on all those hot days, even while it was still hot, every 2 to 4 days we'd be getting a dump load of rain. Flooding has been a big issue around here. But we're kind of beyond that as we get closer and closer to winter, which meant I did have across the whole summer, because it's now September 3rd here. Across the whole summer, there were, I could count the decent days on one hand, but I was only home for a couple of those. I was only able to paint this over the matter of 2 days. So the first day, I did everything I could to get it done in one shot. I should say one session. It took many coats, of course, obviously, as it should. But it occupied all of one day banging it out. And then when it was all done, I was not satisfied with it. So just this past weekend, I sanded the body again, uniformly as best I could, shot it again. And I gotta say that the outcome was how it ought to be. This is probably dropping some jaws in the comment section, but this is fabulous. I cannot pick out a single flaw on this body, aside from when they had made this. They drilled out some holes, and they did have a little bit of tear out. We're talking, tiny amounts, like over here, these tear outs, those are factory tear outs from when they had drilled all these. You can see some of the remnants here, but for the most part I was able to remove a bunch of it through sanding. But because there were tear outs from the factory, that meant when I went and enlarged these holes for higher quality pots and jacks, that there was some additional tear out, as you find that some of the sections that were loose when you went in to drill with, what was loose was then removed, and now we have a couple of these larger scars. However, the good news is that my knobs will completely cover these. So as big and ugly as that one is, you won't see it. And I know I tried all the tricks in the book. I taped over it with decent tape, and when I enlarged the hole, I went up in small increments, as small as I could. I got a master tool bit set. There was just nothing I could do about it because that was more or less pre-existing. I should say 60 60 to 75% of that was pre-existing, and me just drilling it made it go boop. And yes, I could have gone in there and fixed it with filler, but due to my poor painting environments, I didn't have an adequate environment for that either. That's proved to be a problem as I'm trying to restore cars with I shouldn't say sensitive bodywork, but bodywork nonetheless is sensitive as it is. So, anywho, with those disclaimers aside, the top is absolutely perfect. There is not a single freaking flaw here. And what I used was the highest end primer that Duplicolor sells. So, auto body paints is all I use for this stuff because it's the highest quality stuff. If it's the best thing for your car, it's going to be the best thing for your guitar. Hands down, no questions asked. So I did that. A few layers of primer, sand. A few more layers of primer, sand. And then once all that was done, I went through a Duplicolor paint. Again, bodywork stuff, the highest quality stuff you can get. And that is the paint coat I used. I know the internet says, well, when you're using Pelham blue, it's supposed to be, there's supposed to be some green in it. Well, you know what? Maybe if we're talking original finish on a guitar that was made in the 60s and hasn't been painted since, sure, the paint may age. I say the paint may age. It's more so the finish that ages, and the paint will fade with it. But if it sees a lot of sun, this blue can eventually turn green because paints and woods, yada, yada, yada. Almost everything under the sun yellows. Some things turn pale, but for the most part, everything turns yellow. But that's not what I want. When I see Dave Grohl play this up on stage, it's blue. I don't want no green. I do like the green fade of some of those Pelham blues out there. Kind of neat. But I want it to look new. This is a new guitar. It hasn't had that action. And even if it does get that action, I want it to still look new. So we picked out a relatively close blue. This is very, very close to what you would see on the actual Gibson model. In the camera here with my nice bright white light in the room. Again, old house. I'm lucky to have a light in this house. It took a lot of work putting outlets throughout the rooms. Each room had maybe one. They all had 0 or 1. You didn't really get a choice in that. So, that ended up turning out great. But the first time I painted it, once the paint had dried and cured fully, I noticed some flaws. I would see spots like this. So you can see that these lower bouts, they all look perfectly amazing and uniform. And as I roll it around, we reach a spot that looks kind of hazy. You barely see it. I know it's reflecting a lot of light in the room, but there is. See, it's like a white hazy, almost like I didn't have enough layers, even though I did. That was the issue I had. I wasn't getting. I was getting a consistent coat, and it was plenty of coverage. The problem is the surface itself is not uniform. Not that it's not smooth, it's not perfectly rounded. That's the difference. So I had that kind of all over the top, specifically in this area, and then up in here, and then maybe one spot over here. And that is from when the factory went and arched this whole top. I imagine they run it through some sort of CNC machine, probably the quickest, easy way to do it, or they have a exact copy of what they want to use. So they have a master jig, and they have a tool that runs across the master, and then on the other end of the tool is a drill bit. And it perfectly, well, I say perfectly, it more or less perfectly duplicates the master onto your new copy body. So they have something of that extent. And then when they're all done, it gets a quick sanding, because it is a maple top. It's not a veneer. Or at least I think it's maple. If it is maple, it's a rather soft one, not the hard rock maple you would be wanting or getting from North America. Anyways, it's that sanding process where it leaves some flaws. This whole top has to be perfectly arched. Otherwise, if you sand in a tiny spot, about the size of a fingerprint, a tiny spot for Teflon, and it doesn't take much, just the tiniest bit Teflon, you turn this nice round bevel into a round flat spot, and then round again. And that is what causes this haziness. And I had that haziness and splotches all over, and they were all about the size of my finger and thumb prints. But they were in clusters. There was a thick, long one here and a small one here, and like I said, another one almost diagonally over here. So when I had primed I sanded the whole thing, and then I primed it, and then after I painted it and paint cured, I was able to see each of those, well, more or less flat spots. And I'm guessing over here, my problem is that the surface is concave instead of being perfectly flat. I'm pretty sure that's the problem here. So once I found that out and it finished curing, I finally got time to it. It was months later. Finally sanded all the blue by hand, and then shot it again. And then this time the top actually turned out perfect. Absolutely perfect. How I feared it would be was what happened to the back. And you can actually see that. There's a lot of grain that's recessed here. It would take a lot of sanding to cure that. And by sanding, I mean sanding the actual wood and then sanding the primer equally as much. So I had fought a lot of that. On the top side, I spent many hours sanding through all of my grits, just trying to make it dang near perfect, like a $10,000 paint job on a car would be. And it shows. On the top side, it is free of flaws, any flaws. But on the back side, there's plenty of this. And I am fine with that. I can live with that because I am not really seeing it. It's going to spend all of its time up against my belly or up against a wall or in its case. Up and down the neck, it looks great. There's a couple... If you see any smudges on the camera, that's just from me handling it during the filming of this video. And they're not altercations to the paint, it's just my hands are warm and they have a little bit of humidity to them. I don't get wet, sweaty hands. But there is some humidity to them because they're warm. The whole house right now is kind of cold. It's 68, 69 degrees in the whole house. So moisture draws, well, to any warmth. I'm warm, moisture's drawn to me. I'm leaving a couple fingerprints on this. So when it's time to clear coat it, I'll have to wipe it clean. And up at the headstock, I can tell I didn't sand as perfectly as I wanted to. Or possibly the headstock had acquired some humidity in storage, because you can see stripes, and they're identical to the wood grain. The wood grain of this headstock is exactly matching these stripes. So it looks like a whole bunch of fingerprint smudges going vertically in the same direction on the back of this guy. It's the same problem I had on the body, but then rectified it aside from this one lower bout. Again, I'm playing it when it's in a case or when it's hanging up on the wall. You can't see it. So I'll be just dandy with that. But otherwise, the whole neck turned out perfect, aside from one minor flaw. When I peeled up my tape, and I was worried this would be a pain in the butt, but this was only masking tape issue I had. You can see some primer there. When I peeled up all the tape, just a tiny chunk of blue came up with it. So I'll go through with a little brush, quick dab that up before I clear it, and we'll be a-okay. But first, before it gets any clear coat, I have to go through and scrape all the paint off all the bindings. You can see I did a pretty good job masking them, and I masked it north of the line. That way I can blend it as I see fit, because any masking you do, your paint, slowly gets thicker and thicker as you apply more layers, and eventually it's going to be taller than the surface that was masked. That's what we have here. You can hear me scrape that difference just with my fingerprints. So I have to do that all around the body, do all the bindings. For the diamond bindings, it's really hard to tell in photos if Gibson has blue paint over the tops of the bindings or not. But I think I'm going to go with only revealing the bindings on the inside. So then in stock form, it looks exactly like this. But as you roll it around, you will see a strip of white. I think I want it like that. In some of the photos I see, it kind of looks like that, and I prefer it. I don't really care if what I'm going to do is more accurate, but I personally prefer that look, and it's not me being lazy. I should say that all the little flaws or compromises I'm making aren't because I'm lazy or aren't interested in doing it. It's because I personally don't care about them, and I don't say that to hide any laziness. I went through a lot of effort making this top perfect, and that panned out. I don't quite have the ability to do that to the other side, but if I wanted to, I really could. It's just that this process would then take twice the amount of time, and I'm perfectly fine with that. But I personally am not going to get that back out of this. My reward for the top is fantastic. I'm not going to get that much satisfaction out of the back looking that great. Does that justify my flaws? Yeah. Am I looking to justify my flaws? No. Screw that. I made perfect what needed to be perfect. Everything else, I really don't care. The headstock turned out pretty good. The front side, ironically, it turned out better than the back side. And I say that because this front side is what's going to be painted black, just like the real deal. Gloss black on the front side of the headstock, back side is left blue. Same with the sides. Sides are left blue as well. Yes, I know there's a little run of blue here. We'll sand that before it gets black, because this whole surface is going to get sanded before it gets black. And you may ask, where is that run from? Well, here's how I painted it. Use a coat hanger. Kind of do this kind of funny shape with it. And then I run the hook through the top tuner hole. And then I just carefully paint around it so that doesn't happen. I achieved that on the back side, but on the front side, after I could tell that the whole coat was laying out perfect, I got a little sloppy. But only on the front, and I was fine with that because the front's getting painted black anyways. It didn't matter. It's just like the back having some smudges. That did not matter. The neck being perfect and the body being perfect, the face of the body, those mattered. I wanted those just nailed. So when I hooked this up, I also made sure that the small end of the hook was on the back, so that way I could get adequate paint everywhere in the back where I needed it. That worked out fine. Yes, I got paint on the nut. Well, I got news. I have a new nut. This nut, it's not even sanded to match the body. The nut is merely plastic. We're going to put on I'm trying to decide between a white and a black tusk nut. It's going to get one of those two. And then that will be sanded so it's the same feel as the body. They didn't sanded at all, so the underside is, the neck is much smaller than the nut itself. So we'll rectify that. But with that really being my only flaw, in my eyes, we're going to call that perfect. So we'll have another video when the clear is all done. It took a lot to mask up the fretboard, and we'll just have to do it again. We do want to be getting clear on the white binding of the fretboard, but we don't want it rolling over the surface so much. So we're just going to mask this very simply and crudely, and just to keep the bulk of clear coat off of the wood primarily. And then once we've sprayed it and the clear cures, pull off our tape, and then we'll go through any clear that's on top side. We'll take a razor blade you lay it down like this, scrapey, kind of all the way across, real light, until you've removed all that clear coat. And then when you're done, you're going to have it only on the edge of the binding. And then it'll be like that around the whole rest of the guitar, and things will be a-okay. I do have all my hardware in a box nearby. I'm still saving up for some decent pickups. I think I've settled on the Seymour Duncan hot rod set, where you get like a HB in the bridge and a jazz in the neck. I think that's the combo. I know the stock guitar uses a pair of burst buckers, but I'm pretty sure the cost of those is crazy. And that doesn't bug me, but the limitations of them plus the costs are annoying. They cost too much for me to want to go in and disconnect the one joining wire that goes from the north coil to the south coil, because I want this to be single coil splittable, and then series parabelt well splittable. So both of those. And for me to do that, I need a 4-wire humbucker. Well, or 3-wire humbucker. It's the same thing, really. It's just a matter of how long they made that final lead. But the burst buckers, they don't come like that, so I'd have to modify them. They are too expensive for me to want to modify them. I'm not going to pay $400 or so for a pair of pickups that I then have to do some surgery on, and then if they don't work for some reason after that, I'm out a whole lot of money and a little bit of time. I don't need that. So we'll just use Seymour Duncans. If I don't like them, I'll change them out. But I got a feeling I'll like them. I got a nice high quality bridge and tailpiece set. I have nice, they're either Burns or CTS push-pull pots. High quality pickup selector switch, and then a switchcraft jack. And then all the wiring I have is period correct from the 60s. I think they're all cloth covered wires. So then should someone be looking inside one of these holes, it's going to look quite authentic. The only thing I'm missing is going to be the red Gibson badge of authenticity, the red decal. So with all of that out of the way, what else have I done for the guitar? Well, shortly after I bought it, I had invested in a hard shell case. So, popped online, ordered up an Epiphone 335 case. It will say it fits other guitars. It might even say it fits the Casino. That particular 335 or 355, whatever. I'm really bad at these Gibson hollow bodies. Point being, it fits this one just dandy. If it's an Epiphone case and it says it fits the 335, rest assured when you put your DG-335 in here, that stock clears just dandy. It's not tight in there. It's the end of it isn't even touching the tip of the fur. It just looks like it from the camera, but you can see a black spot there where it's not touching. It's actually in here quite snug. Absolutely perfect fit. 10 out of 10. That guy's going nowhere. So we'll do that. But that kind of concludes everything thus far. Like I said, once it gets, like I said, I have to do a little bit more prep. I have to scrape the paint off of all the binding where I want to, anyways, like I said, and then mask up the fretboard. I got that one spot of paint to touch up on the neck, and then at that point, it's however many layers of clear coat I feel necessary, and then I can finally assemble the thing. So I got a whole stick. Okay, don't ignore the Tex-Mex pickups. I got a whole set of nice high-end hardware to put in it, except for tuners. I'm still picking out tuners, and like I said, the Seymour Duncans, I'm still saving up for those. I'm hoping to get those later this fall. But then by that point, it should be all done. But you'll get a video after the clear coat is done, and then we'll have a video of it fully assembled or a video during the final assembly, one of the two, and then probably won't hear from it at all for a while until I do like some sort of review many months or years from the point it's finished. But yeah, really excited to start enjoying it here now. So I'll leave you guys be. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section. I do try to keep after those. If you're asking where it came from, I think it was Pango music. It was very hard to find. Not many of these, we'll say, fake Dave Grohls have the proper headstock. Most of them have the 3 per side Gibson headstock. Very few have the Firebird headstock. And there are some guitars out there like the East Coast makes one or something like that. Some sort of affordable brand out there. And the body the body sculpts are wrong. You could see mine fit that case dang near perfect. I can't come up with any kind of way to improve it. I really do think it's 9 out of 10 or even better. The body shape is just perfect, and it's obvious once you put it in a genuine case. So I'm quite fond of it, but we'll probably leave it there for now, and hopefully you guys can see it soon, even more shiny than it is now. So take care.